Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
John, I bet people who listen to this here show each week wonder what we talk about when we're not talking about sports. And you know what? We talk about all kinds of things, John. I mean, but it's a sports show, so we'll stick to sports because sometimes, things can veer off course and head into territories, and people are like, I don't know what they're talking about anymore. I'm going to change the channel.
So we need to stick with sports.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Stick with sports.
Okay, we'll do that.
So, and what we're going to start off with today is we're going to start off with some high school football because essentially the playoffs are set. There are a few things to be worked out in some districts that have some tiebreakers and that kind of stuff, but that doesn't involve any of the teams in our area. They all know who they're going to be playing, when they're going to be playing, where they're going to be playing on November the 8th. And so we're going to talk about that part. And that comes off of this past Friday night when Barren County and Glasgow played their final district games of the regular season. But because of the playoffs, they'll get to play more district opponents. And the other thing that we're going to kind of talk about as related to that is the brackets for some of the teams in the area for our teams here at Glasgow and Barren County. We're going to talk about Caverna's bracket. We'll talk about Monroe County. Metcalf didn't make a bracket, unfortunately, because they got the luck of playing in a 5-team district. But let's start off with this Glasgow game. They ended up getting a win in Liberty on Friday night. They beat Casey County 21-14, and I think some people were, if they attended the game or they checked the score the next day or whatever, they'd be like, wow, that was a lot closer than I expected. And I think I felt that way. I mean, I would tune in and listen to a little bit of it and check on Twitter to see what's going on. I think one of the key things is that Nick Mitchell did not play in the game.
That's a big loss.
Yeah.
But still, the scores still surprised me.
Right.
Because Glasgow trailed for much of the game, too.
Yeah, I think they were down. They may have been down 14-0 in that game, as a matter of fact. I can't remember if it was 14-0 or 14-7.
Right, and this is not the Casey County team of a few years ago, in which they were 10-1, 11-1. They'd lost a lot of those players, so it did surprise me. I thought Glasgow would just go up there and roll Casey County.
Yeah,
and I believe the same coach is there, and he's really good. But it surprised me the struggle that they have even without Nick Mitchell, because Glasgow's got good players.
Yeah,
but that surprised me.
I think one of the things, Hunter Scott had to move the running back, which he was supposed to be Nick Mitchell's backup at running back anyway, and what part of their offense this whole year has been the fact that they could match Hunter Scott up in passing plays and with people who could not cover him. And he's had a bunch of big plays for him all year long in the passing game. And then once they moved him in, he had to slide back there to running back, and now he's primarily having to take those runs, or maybe Abernathy's having to run a little more than they really want him to. Then that's taken away some things in their passing game. But also, it sounded like Casey County just had a plan. And you mentioned how good they have been in recent years. Sometimes, winning becomes infectious even when you lose those players. And then if you have a good coach and they have the same coach and they have a good plan, they can execute some things that will catch you off guard. And it sounded like they were basically giving Glasgow a bunch of things that maybe they weren't prepared for. And also, maybe Glasgow's players, they won the big game against Taylor County.
Could be a little let down.
Yeah, and they're coming in next week. Taylor had, I think they had beat Casey like 42-6 or something like that. And so maybe Glasgow's players looked up and said, well, we should be able to win this one like that as well.
Maybe a little let down. Long trip.
Yep, long trip. You can't get to Liberty from here.
Unfamiliar opponent. And it's possible they could have had a letdown, and it was a struggle, but they won. That's the good news. It was a district game, and they did get the win, but they had to fight for it, and they did not take the lead. I believe I'm right until the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
and it seemed like it took a super effort from the sophomore Myers. Had like
John Carter. Yeah,
he had like 12, 13 tackles, interceptions, and things like that.
Yeah, I know he had one in the end zone that killed would have put the game away for Casey County.
It seemed like he was fantastic that night.
And that's not the first game defensively. I mean, he had a great game against South Warren as well.
I've not seen him play because when Glasgow's playing, Barron's playing, I call their games, but he seems to be a fantastic player.
Yeah, he's a tenacious tackler. I'll tell you that. I mean,
Not real big either right now, is he?
No, I mean he's the size of a sophomore.
Right.
Not exceptionally large for a kid his age or anything like that. But I tell you what he does. I mean he is a form tackler. When he gets to somebody, he gets them on the ground. It's pretty impressive.
It's a lost art.
It is indeed, and it's a lot of fun because I tell you another thing. Getting off track a little bit, but the thing about a form tackler is a lot of times people are like they don't hit hard, they just tackle. Well, no, a good form tackler gets a shoulder in the right spot, and when they make the tackle, they also make an impact.
Right.
And he does all that. So, he had a huge night for him. And in the end, Abernathy had a good night for him. He had a good enough night to win the game for him. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about. I think what Glasgow, the benefit of that South Warren game, even though they lost it, they got to play against a team that never feels like they're going to lose a game, because they always feel like they have a chance to win.
Right.
And I think maybe Glasgow, even on the tough times, they've learned some things from that.
Yeah, it's in between the Taylor game, which was a big game for them, and everybody knew it was. It's in between Taylor and Franklin.
Yeah,
they play Franklin this Friday, and even though it has no impact on the playoffs or anything, it's still they're playing the defending 4A state champion, a team they have not beaten for a long time.
Yeah,
and maybe in the back of their mind or whatever, you never know. But Franklin would be a huge challenge because Franklin started off 0-4. They've won 5 straight, I believe.
Yeah, they won all their district games. I think they scored better than 30 points in all of their district games.
Right. And though they're not the team as they were last year, it'd be a formidable opponent for Glasgow.
Well, and Franklin is one of those programs that they lost a lot of talent. I mean, you don't lose Carlos McKinney and Trey Bass and look around and say, hey, plug in somebody else. Those guys are exceptional.
And a lineman that went to Western.
Yep, and a lineman went to Western. I mean, they lost some key talent all across that team, but they are the kind of program that during the course of the season, and we're seeing it, by the time you get to the last Friday of the season, you're going to see a good football team.
That's correct. And it'll be physical, too.
It'll be physical. It'll be a great game to get Glasgow ready for the playoffs.
Correct, because they should not struggle their first round.
No,
they should.
They get a dare.
They have a dare, and a dare should not give them a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But Franklin will be physical, and you want a good performance. Same sense, you don't want to get anybody hurt,
right?
Because Glasgow has a shot to go deep in the playoffs, and Franklin's physical.
Yeah.
And you can't play cautious. Either you play your players or you don't play your players.
Right.
It's just one of those things that you have to do, and. Obviously, it's a game that Coach Garman wanted at the end of the year. He thought it'd help them going because you don't just add Franklin unless you have a purpose.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I mean, so Glasgow plays Adair County. That's on November 8th at Glasgow. Sounds like it'll be a 7 o'clock kick. There's been a change to the Barren County kick-off time. It's going to be at 6:30 on November 8th when they play at North Hardin. So that's going to be a little different than the usual 7 o'clock kick. 6:30 Central. 7:30 Eastern, right?
Right.
So, but then, like you said, so then Glasgow, if they win that game, they get another home game. You would think it'd be against Taylor County, but hey, after the way Casey played Friday night, you never know. Casey may have had people out this year, and they're getting healthy. Who knows?
That's right.
Meanwhile, Barren County, they went to Meade County. That was their first road district game of the season, and sounded sort of like things just kind of went awry in that game because it was a close game, and then Meade just pulled away. And I know you guys were on the air, and I got to listen to part of it. One of it was a whole discussion about a loss of a down.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, it was, and the score was not indicative of the competitiveness of the game.
Yeah.
I think the final score ended up being 42-6.
Yeah.
Something
42-12.
Barren got the kickoff and marched it probably 10, 12 plays, went 70 yards, touchdown.
Yeah. Started well.
6-0.
Kind of reminded me of the Woodford start.
That's correct. And one of the keys was Meade got it, and part of Meade's success throughout this run, they were in the state finals in 2014.
Yeah.
Is that they're ball control, physical. When Meade's has a clientele where they're not going to outspeed people that they play normally, playing all the Louisville schools and so forth. So they're a physical team.
Yeah.
And they converted 2 4th downs on their first drive, and one was a 4th and 3 in which we had them dead stopped in the backfield, and the kid just broke tackles. And who knows how games can change, if you stop them twice on fourth down in that first drive. But they went ahead and marched it and scored.
Yeah.
And made the extra point, took a 7-6 lead. And the game was tight. It was 14-6. The controversy started was with about 2.5 minutes to go, 14-6. We received the kickoff. Had a first hit right around the 30, and we ran a play and basically lost a couple yards. Plus, there was a hold called down the field. And in the confusion of whether or not they were going to, Meade was going to take the penalty or whatever, there was a little bit of confusion. But that was the first play. They declined it, so it should be second down.
Yeah.
The next play, we threw a little pass and completed. So it's third. It should have been 3rd and 5, and the down marker said 4th and 5.
Yeah.
It was it was just clear that we'd only run it. We only had the ball twice. The official said.
What was the penalty?
It was a decline. They declined a hold.
Okay, so it was a holding. I never quite understood.
Yeah, it was a hold that they declined.
Yeah.
Anyway, the confusion part would be you would think if they were going to screw up, we would have got an extra down because of that. But what had happened was the guy that keeps the downs on the side moved it to 2, second down, and then the official told him after all that confusion with the hold to go ahead and change the down. He moved it up to 3.
So the official thought it was second down, I guess. When the play happened, I mean.
Right, and all the confusion, and they forced us to punt on 3rd down. And 6 out of the 7 officials evidently got together and they thought it was 4th down. I've never seen anything like it. I've never ever seen it. One of the back judges, through talking to our reporter on the sideline, Chad Withrow, said that he thought we were right. It was just 3rd down, but he was overruled by these other guys. It's a mistake that I just don't think you can make. It's like in baseball, saying 2 outs instead of 3.
Yeah.
Or in basketball, allowing somebody to play with 6 players rather than 5. You can't make those. These are just too easy. And we had 3 timeouts left and could have converted. Was forced to punt and they got it, and I think it shook us. They went down and scored, and and then the game got a little chippy beforehand. Meade County is a type of team. They remind me of a Pulaski County team where you don't see this at any level but high school, but where teams are taught to keep their block until the whistle.
Yeah. Whether
you're 40 yards away or not.
Yeah.
You'll look and they're still blocking and still on top of you. Right to the whistle, no matter where you are on the field. It's one of those deals.
I always thought that kind of reminds me. We talk about Metcalf as a physical team. When Larry Harbison was there, that's what you would see from them. They would just keep hitting.
They're right on that edge.
Yeah,
right on that edge.
Yeah.
And it's not allowed at the other levels.
No.
And I think that got to us. Tyler Bush was ejected, unfortunately, in the first half, and he'll have to miss more than likely this Friday night, his senior night.
Yeah.
There was another incident right at the end of the first half as well, where there was another fight broke out, and probably about 20 players were involved in terms of breaking it up. But sidelines did not come out, luckily. But they had one of their players ejected. But the referee signaled it was 74 for Meade County's ejected. There's no 74. There's none on there was none on the field. There was none on the roster. There was none. And I looked at the incident report that schools get about ejections, and they have 74 ejected, and they had name. They put NA, not applicable. They don't know.
So they threw out a guy who wasn't there.
Yeah, we lost a player.
They lost a phantom.
Our best player.
Yeah.
And it's going to be out another week, and right now they're searching for who it is. Now, I guess the KSWSA more likely will get film, and we'll go over it and so forth. But it got chippy, and it was unfortunate, some things. The referees did not call us, it's not their fault that we kind of lost some emotional control out there.
Yeah.
That's not their fault. But they did do a really poor job of management. And you just can't miss a down situation. That's on them.
Yeah.
And they refused even after the game. They said they were right, and we rewatched the film, and they were wrong. I mean, we only had it. When you only get it 2 times, you have to punt. That's Canadian football. It works. And that would. as a coach would irritate me, to say the least. And then they got real, there was probably 10 unsportsmanlike called, and they called one on the bench because Jackson was rightfully trying to make a point that this is not, and it was unfortunate. We are to blame for a lot of our behavior in terms of that. I thought the second half was a lot better.
Yeah,
but the officials, I just say, had a tough night. Didn't beat us, and you can't blame officials when you lose 42-14.
Well,
42-12. You can't blame them for that. But that was not a strong moment for them.
Well, and I mean it's just amazing because when I was listening to it and you were talking about it, the thing was you had made a comment about I don't think that was a loss of down penalty. And I'd missed what the penalty was, so that's why I was curious what it was.
Yeah, they declined the penalty. It didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, so because in my mind I was thinking, well, the guy running the box thought it was a loss of down, and so he had gone ahead and flipped the thing, and nobody paid attention to it.
Right.
Which somebody did pay attention to it and told him to go ahead and flip it again.
Yeah,
which is even more amazing.
That's right. He had it right on second down, and then the officials told him move it up to third. That's right.
Of course, not saying the guy had he's being preferential or whatever, but I mean, the boxes are run by the locals.
It is,
and so I'm not sure. I'm sure he's like, okay,
that's right. It's not my
whatever
call.
You say, ref.
That's right.
So it's just when I was listening to it, I was like, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
But you are correct. In the end, there's always going to be some level of adversity in a football game.
Correct.
That's a bit rare.
It is, and it is early enough to overcome it. But I will say it's very frustrating when you got a quarterback and receivers who can move the ball up and down the floor. I don't think New England would like it.
No.
If they only got 2 downs and they said, well, it's 4th down.
Well, everybody in the NFL would be fine with that.
That's true. But they also have video, and they can recheck it and things like that. I will say it was hard for the officials because when you see things break out like that, with some of the personal fouls and stuff and kind of the scrum, it's kind of hard without video to see who does what. But there's no excuse not to know how many downs there is. None.
Yeah, that's a rare one. That's like
and then be so stubborn that you don't change it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. The thing I don't know about the official crew selection and that kind of stuff. Where you guys are going to where Barron's playing in this district this year.
It's a different association.
Yeah, I mean,
your associations are not tied to your district. It's tied to location. When you go up E-Town, you got a different association than this area.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because usually Barron would be playing against teams in this area, and so they would know who these officials are. Correct. But in this district they're in
it's
now.
Different. But you still expect to know how many downs there are.
Yeah, to know the rules.
If I'm playing in Podunk, Kentucky, I may not be confident in the competency of the officials, but can you keep up with the downs?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, if they were playing in Tennessee, you still got 4 downs.
That's right. It's still 4 downs.
These are National Federation rules.
And it don't go 1, 2, 4.
Or 2, 4, 3, or whatever number they were coming up with.
There's a sequence.
But anyway, so the way it works out is Barron's going to play at North Hardin on November 8th in the first round of the playoffs. They do have a game this Friday at home against Edmonson County.
Senior night, it's a winnable game.
Yep.
The North Hardin defeated Central Hardin 7-0.
Yeah, that was a slobber knocker in the weather.
We thought it'd be close.
Yeah.
Well, it really didn't rain much up there.
Really?
No, it did not. All the rain came down here. I mean, it was a light mist for some of our game, but it really wasn't that bad. I assume E-Town was not much different than Brandenburg, but we got Edmondson, and for Barron football, the deal with Friday, if they can defeat Edmondson, and Barron will be a favorite. Now, Tyler Bush is a big loss because he plays on offense, defense, and also special teams.
Yeah, I kind of wondered.
They can get 6 wins.
Yeah.
And that's the first winning season since 2000.
That's right?
That's a big deal because we'll be obviously heavily underdogs against North Hardin.
Yeah. I kind of wondered, could the coaches ask that he sit out the playoff game instead of the senior night game?
No.
Is that senior night Friday?
Yeah, no, I don't think you get those options.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, you can't pick which games to sit out.
Oh, well, anyway, hey, they could send him the film and say, hey, you should just let him sit out whenever we want him to sit out, like next year. How about next year?
Yeah.
This is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, it's a fine time of the year, because it's college football is rolling along, and high school football, as we've already discussed, is nearing the playoffs. But college football is kind of at that point where we're starting to figure out, who's what, I think. And I think you and I discussed this last week. We'll just start with this. We'll start with Kentucky, actually, because we discussed last week that Kentucky needed to win some games, and they had to figure out which games they could win. And they started off on the right foot because they ended up beating Missouri pretty soundly. And honestly, that didn't surprise me that they could beat Missouri.
Well, they've won 2 out of 3 games using a receiver at quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, Bowden or Bowden or whatever his name.
Lynn Bowden.
Yeah.
I mean, he's I think Kentucky only threw it 8 times total, but he as the quarterback ran it for 203 yards.
Right.
Against a team that had been in the top 25, Missouri. I mean, it's not like there's some scrum.
Yeah.
So
they were at number 22 2 weeks ago, is what it was.
Right. So their only loss while he's been at quarterback was Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, he's just a heck of a player. Now, it's mind-boggling how an SEC team cannot figure out how to stop a team who has no intention of throwing it.
Yeah, right.
And now Kentucky's defense has really gotten better.
Yeah.
And it certainly didn't hurt Kentucky to play in a rainstorm. If you're primarily a running team and things like that it's a huge, there's a lot of wind and things like that.
Yeah.
They ought to try him at kicker. I mean, he can do everything. He's a great receiver. He's a quarterback, but the one thing they don't have is a kicker. Man, throw him over there and let him kick because they can't make a kick. Yeah, they can't make a kick. He can probably make a kick.
Yeah, I mean, might as well. The thing is with all the quarterback issues for Kentucky this year with injuries and whatnot,
I'd just leave him in.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, and
because the team believes in him.
Yes.
They believe in him, and now he's going to. I don't know how he keeps the pace up because he took a lot of shots because I watched a lot of that. He takes a lot of shots, and Tennessee will hit you. They got Tennessee coming up in 2 weeks. They still got Vanderbilt, and so there's winnable games, but Tennessee and Vanderbilt have gotten better, and they tend to play pretty good defense.
The thing about the Kentucky team is that the defense, they lost some key players on defense, but Stoops is a defensive guy, and they've been doing a good job recruiting good defensive players. Their biggest problem once Wilson went out was just having a quarterback who could just not give the game away.
Right.
And they went to Bowden, and that's basically what he is.
Yeah. Now he didn't.
Now he's an offensive weapon as well.
That's right.
But he's definitely not going to give the game away.
No. He'll fumble occasionally. He did that, but no. It's just the team has a belief in him. And he can throw it a little bit, and it's generally just go patterns and throw it up and things like that. He's not throwing a lot of deep outs and dig patterns and things like that. He's not that level.
No precision.
No, not really. No, but he is a winner.
Yeah,
and he's impressed me, to be perfectly honest with you. And he's been very impressive. And I give Stoops credit because they're winning games. Not conventionally, and he's figuring out a way to do it. He's adapting, and I think that goes to his credit.
I guess after the Smith debacle in the one game, he just kind of looked and said, basically that. I mean, our defense is good enough to stop people. We just got to figure out how to get enough offense to be ahead.
Right,
and that's what they've gone to. And then the other thing is, I think. Going back to what you said about the players believing in Bowden, I mean, it does remind me of the Stevie Johnson thing in a lot of ways. I mean, they had a guy at quarterback when Stevie Johnson came along. Stevie Johnson's not an NFL quarterback, but the players around him believed in him, and he was a winner. And that's basically, they put Bowden back there, and that's what he is.
That means a lot.
Yeah, it does. I mean, if the players will play with you and for you, I mean, there's not – because really, I mean, when you get down to it in the SEC East, the talent gap is not that great from top to bottom. I mean, Georgia's – the most talented team, but I'm not sure.
Florida's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean those teams they have talent, but the rest of them are all in the same box.
I agree.
Meanwhile, Louisville got a big win against Virginia.
Moves them to 5-3.
Yeah, I mean, when this season started, I would have guessed that we would have all thought that Kentucky might have a winning season.
Yep.
They'd lost a lot of talent. none of us would have said yes to Louisville having a winning season, and none of us would say yes to WKU.
I just wanted Louisville to play hard.
Right?
Just
show up on Saturday.
Show up and play hard. Now they're all of a sudden they're 5-3, and this coach has done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Now they didn't throw it a lot either. I think they only threw it like 12 times. So,
yeah.
But they had Cunningham, one of their 3 quarterbacks, right. Played pretty decently. But they have a freshman running back, Hawkins, that had like 140 something yards. And Virginia, another team that has been in the top 20. Out of it now, and it's another good win for Louisville. I mean, Louisville can play Kentucky at the end of the year, and both teams may not throw it 10 times.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you like 1950s football, it'll be a game for you. I do.
Louisville's just a power running team, and but they throw it more than Kentucky.
Yeah.
Their receivers are really good, and the coach, he's done a good job with the quarterbacks, and just very, very impressive.
Before we get to the WKU game, one thing about it, we have in Louisville and WKU, we have new coaches who have come in and seen the talent they had and did the best they could with it. Adapted,
changed the culture, attitude.
Yep. Stoops is a returning coach, but he's basically done the same thing as this season is going along. He's like, what do I have?
Yep.
And that's kind of, it just feels like, the mark of a pretty good coaches that we have at these 3 schools.
I agree. I think all 3 are in good hands.
Yeah, and so WKU, they ended up losing the game to Marshall. Looked terrible in the first half, to be honest. They were down 17-0. Their offense was bad. Their defense wasn't much better. It was okay, but they were just having a rough time. But then they rallied, came back, tied the game 23, ended up losing, on the field goal there at the end.
Not just the field goal.
Yeah, it was 54 yards. Is that what it was?
I think it's 53.
Yeah, so
at the buzzer.
The longest kick of that kicker's life, I do believe.
Yeah, the kicker had not missed a kick all year, though.
No, and the funny thing was they called 2 timeouts, and he hit the 2 on the timeouts.
Yeah, that's a little tricky. I would think if Coach Helton had to do it all over again, call it a little earlier.
Yeah.
Don't let them, snap and get a free practice kick.
Yeah, get them in the rhythm, because that's kind of what happened.
That's correct, and but you got to give if you get beat at the buzzer on a 53-yarder, sometimes
you were going to lose that game.
Yeah, you have to give the other team credit.
Yeah,
but that was one of those losses where, from a Western perspective, you walk away feeling okay about it.
Yeah,
they didn't play bad. They overcame not a real good start on a difficult place to play. Marshall's not easy to play. They've had great games with Marshall, Western Marshall football, Western Marshall basketball. And men they've had some classic games.
That's a real rivalry.
It really is. It really is. And Lucky Jackson is. He's playing himself into some draft status right now. He had 16 catches for about 160.
Yeah.
He's had back-to-back huge weeks.
And there were some questions about what was wrong with Lucky early in the season. They were having a hard time getting him the ball.
Probably more quarterback than him.
I believe so. It looks like what has happened is they've, Ty Story's gotten comfortable. Lucky Jackson's gotten comfortable with Ty Story, and they're getting the ball to him, and he's doing the things we expected him to do, which is make plays, score touchdowns, and be a threat all the time.
Right.
WKU, we talked about, Kentucky probably can make a bowl game. They got to win a couple more, but they're in the SEC, so they'll get the benefit of the doubt. Louisville may as well, if they can get a win or 2 more. One more win and they're bowl eligible, I think.
Right.
But another one probably secures them a bowl game. WKU's a little sketchier because they're in Conference USA and there aren't that many bowl tie-ins and not that many invites available. But they have a game against FAU. They still, despite the loss to Marshall, they're still in great shape to maybe make that conference championship. And I think that's basically what Helton said. He's like, the season doesn't end. We're still playing for the next game and the next game. And FAU's the next big game for them. They really need to have a win there.
Florida Atlantic is one of the I would argue it's one of the few kind of name programs that I think most people are familiar with. I think most Topper fans are obviously Middle, Marshall, and FAU is fairly familiar because that's where Lane Kiffin is.
Yep.
And it's the I think it's the largest school in the conference, FAU. It's from a beautiful area, Boca Raton.
Yeah.
And Lane Kiffin has national recognition, and luckily they come here.
Yep. This coming Saturday.
Coming Saturday. I think it's a 3:30 start
3
or
o'clock.
3 o'clock start. Yeah. So, critical game. FAU is coming off a huge win where they destroyed somebody in the conference. So, the Toppers will have to play well, but it's a game. It's probably a 50-50 game. I wouldn't have said 50-50 a month ago.
No.
But it's probably up to a 50-50 game.
Yeah, they beat Old Dominion 41-3. So, it's a big game. By the way, you'll be able to hear the Topper tailgate should be 1 o'clock, and then that'll be on 102.7 FM over in Bowling Green. And then the pregame show will be on Sam 100.7 at 2 o'clock with Randy Lee, and then the game kickoff will be at 3. So you can get all of that content about Western Kentucky University on Saturday. So be sure to tune in for that. Meanwhile, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow, and we'll be right back to talk college basketball.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, last week we mentioned that November 5th is the opening day for men's college basketball. And it's strange. I mean, we mentioned this last week, but in a strange kind of schedule setup, Kentucky's playing Michigan State. I think they're 1-2 in the AP preseason poll. By the way, I can't stand preseason polls, but, there they are. Mm-hmm. And then Louisville is opening against ACC foe Miami on November 5th, which is weird. I've never seen that. The only one of them, of the three that we really talk about, WKU opens against Tennessee Tech. That's the only one that plays somebody you're like, oh, that sounds like an opening game.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All the rest of them, I mean, I don't know if they decided to change how these schedules work, because used to, you play a bunch of patsies early.
Kentucky, Michigan, that's just TV. That's just a neutral site in New York. That's just money made for TV.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a doubleheader up there.
Yeah.
I'm sure Duke's playing somebody or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. UCLA. No, I don't know.
I don't know, but it's a doubleheader format.
You'll have them playing North Carolina on the opening night.
Doubt that.
Yeah. So when you look at these three teams, let's just start with Kentucky, because for me, year in and year out, I don't even know who's on Kentucky State.
I don't either.
I don't pay close enough attention to it.
I can't keep up with it. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they got some players. Nick Richards is back.
Yeah.
Emmanuel is back.
Uh-huh.
And Quigley and Ashton Hagens.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of more than normal.
Yeah.
And a slew of freshmen and a transfer from Bucknell.
Yeah. The good old Bucknell transfer. Patriot League.
I think he's going to help them.
Yeah?
Yeah, I saw him play the blue against Georgetown. I liked him.
Yeah.
About 6'8". He's one of the few stretch fours they've had. He can knock down shots and rebound. I think he's probably I'd be surprised he didn't average double figures.
Yeah. I did notice one thing about their roster. I think they actually have 4 Kentuckians on it. And
who? I know the kid that's sitting out from
Dante Allen's on there, Pendleton County, but he's out with an injury, right?
Yeah, I don't know anybody else.
Yeah, the other 3, I didn't know who they were.
They must be walk-ons. I don't know.
I clicked through them real quick, and I'm like, and it didn't list the high schools. I'm like, no, they just happen to live in that town.
Okay, I'm sure they're walk-ons.
Preferred walk-on.
Oh well, yeah. One of them is Coach Payne's. That's
it. Yeah.
One of his sons.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
they'll. I mean, Kentucky is. Kentucky, I mean, it's the same. They look. It's John Calipari's. They'll be talented and they'll be there at the end again. We'll just if you can put a team together in a year, nobody does it quite like he can.
Yeah.
But I do think Ashton Hagen will really help them.
Yeah.
He looked to me to be improved from last year. What you get out of Nick Richards, I don't know. He's a junior, which is ancient at Kentucky.
Yeah.
I think the transfer from Bucknell will really help. He's fourth year. He's a grad transfer. He'll help. And Kentucky is they're number 2. Is that too high? Probably. But they're clearly top 10 in the country talent.
Oh yeah.
I think all 3 teams should be in the top 25 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'll be disappointed if they're not.
Yeah, and for Louisville, that's for certain. I mean, I think they are 7 or...
They're 5th in the AP. That's too high. Too high, way too high.
Is that not mostly based on the fact that Noir came back to play this year?
Yeah, he's back, and most of the roster's back, but still 5 is, I think, too high. I think they're top 15.
Yeah.
And they have an opportunity with under the second year under Chris Mack. They overachieved last year, but they're not going to have that. They're not going to slide under the radar this year.
People will be waiting for him this time.
Yeah, when you're preseason 5 coming off a good year, they're going to expect more.
Yeah.
And we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if they got decent outside shooting. I'm not sold on their point guard play or anything like that, but he did a great job last year.
Yeah.
But number 5 I think is kind of a little bit high.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that because they, as a roster of players, they've gone from people expecting them to not do well or to struggle,
right,
to, like you said, overperforming. So now they're in the position of they got to fulfill that. And last year what happened was sometimes they would have nights where you're like, dang, they look good. And they'd have nights you're like, ooh, they look terrible.
Yeah, well, they beat North Carolina last year.
Yeah.
At North Carolina.
But they didn't have a whole bunch of nights where you went, that's pretty good. Where you're like, that's a decent team.
Right.
And it was good. They were bad in a lot of ways.
Right. They didn't finish real strong.
Yeah, and so they've got to even that out. And I'm with you. I think that number 5 is probably high. And,
right.
and they may have a hard time living up to that.
I think 5 is okay if you put a 1 in front of it.
Yeah.
15.
Well, and the other thing is they open with that ACC game. Then they do play some patsies, so to speak, before they get back into playing ACC teams. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we hit Christmas time and they're bumping around 500 or so because of the transition of trying to become the team they need to be.
They better not be 500 when ACC starts.
Well, no. I mean, when after the ACC starts, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose their first 2 or 3 in the ACC before they finally catch speed.
They better be about 10.
No, they better not. They better not lose those patsy games.
They better be 9-1.
Otherwise, Chris Mack may be hanging out at an Italian restaurant on a Friday night.
Yeah, they better be better than that.
Meanwhile, WKU, they brought back everybody who is important.
And
because
then some.
Massey, Anderson, and Hollingsworth are all back. They added Savage. They added Carson Williams, and they added Cameron Justice. And
Shooter had 7 threes in a scrimmage the other night.
Yeah. So they added the parts that looked like they needed them. We still got to see about the point guard.
Cooper.
I
still think that's the single most important transfer or new player they got.
Yeah.
Because it's the biggest area that they struggled with last year.
Well, it's
just point guard play wasn't good enough.
Right. I mean, you can't win games where you have 13 turnovers in a half.
Yeah, and and your point guard misses free throws and things like that. Cooper is the one. The lips can transfer, and he will just move right in, and that's a key. And I would start to worry. They've been down this road before where they're waiting on transfers, and sometimes they'll get it before the season. Sometimes it's January. Mm-hmm. It just seems like they've kind of been in this situation before. But this was and he's not a grad transfer.
Right.
It's a little different. He left after the coach left, and for other circumstances. So I hope they get him because I think with him right there, I think they're easily a top 25 team. Easily top 25. They're so much better at shooting. With Justice coming back, Carson Williams is a really good player. I think everybody will like him too.
He's a Justin Johnson type. He's not as big as
not near as big,
is.
6'4", 6'5",
but he's an explosive player and he plays hard all the time.
Right, was not known as a really good outside shooter, but what I've seen, he's worked on it. It looked pretty good to me when I saw parts of the scrimmage. Justice will really help them, another shooter, and then you naturally. Bassey's going to be better coming back, preseason All-American. He's going to be better. Hollingsworth is his 3rd year. He's had 2 good years.
Yeah.
You think Savage and Josh Anderson. I mean, there's no better athlete in the country than Josh Anderson.
Right.
And he doesn't need to be the point guard. So, you move him off the ball where he can be that. He's more of a small forward, 6'7", 6'8" athlete where he can do what he can do.
Yeah.
They got all the ingredients to be a really not only a top 25 team, NCAA tournament team. The only thing that could hurt them with the NCAA tournament team is they could be one of the top 40 teams in the country, but how Conference USA has been treated recently. if you don't win the
pretty
conference,
miserably, yeah.
If you don't win the conference, it's hard to get in.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because they got the talent to get in, and it puts a lot of pressure on winning that tournament.
Yeah. That is the downside. And when you kind of look at all these programs that have changed conferences over the years and that kind of stuff, and I'm sure people get tired of that. But, I mean, that's the bottom line. If you look way back when Louisville was playing in Conference USA, I mean, they couldn't – no matter how good they were in football or basketball, it was hard for them to get the respect they needed, or get the breaks they needed to get into the tournament, get into the right bowl games, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's why you got to change the conferences. But again, 2 years ago when WKU and Marshall played in that conference final, those were two tournament teams.
Yes, no question about it.
And I mean, there were probably two tournament teams last year, with Middle Tennessee and all, or 2 years ago, that year as well, I think. So. I mean, Conference USA's had some quality programs. They just can't get those seeds.
And it's hard to play. I mean, Western beat Arkansas last year.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get those teams consistently on your schedule. And the other thing is you don't know. All you can do is try to put teams on your schedule, but you don't know what they're what they're going to be.
Yeah,
it's like in football right now. Clemson is dropping in the polls and still winning, and they're not. They're saying, well, they're out of conference schedule. Well, they've got two SEC teams on their out of conference football schedule.
Yeah.
Texas A&M and South Carolina.
Right
now, in football, your schedule needs 3 or 4 years down the road. I don't see how they can't. I don't see how you blame them for trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, we scheduled SEC schools. We can't help that they're not necessarily good now.
That's right. and the Conference USA faces that in basketball oftentimes. It's hard to get enough schools to play you that helps your RPI and all that other stuff. It's hard to, and the biggest problem that Conference USA has is the bottom of their conference. Kills them.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad.
Kills them.
Real quick, let's change gears. Let's talk about the women's side of this a little bit. I didn't put this on the sheet, but, I mean, you'll get to see the WKU women quite a bit this year.
Right.
And they bring back a pretty good crew of talent this year. I mean, I think last year was not a down year. It was a transition year for them.
Yeah.
But they by the end of the year, some of their players had really come alive.
They got all their scoring back.
Yeah.
Dee Givens is one of the best players in Conference USA.
Yeah.
Could get drafted, to be perfectly honest with you. Great shooter. I mean, she averaged over 45% from three, 85% from the free throw line, and close to 50% overall field goal position.
Yeah,
that's good, to say the least. Got Alexis Brewer's coming off shoulder. I think she's a big key because she can flat score and shoot, but she's kind
of a glue player too, isn't she? As far as
she's had a lot of injury problems, and she's still not healthy right now.
Mm-hmm.
You got Renee Melchideway. She averaged about 14, 15 a game, 10 rebounds. She's back for her third year. So they got most of their players back. The weakness last year was defensively and rebounding.
Yeah.
Overall, not a real good defensive team. Gave up a ton of points. Got better as the year went on.
Yeah.
But to compound their defense, we didn't rebound very well.
Right.
And those are the two areas that when I start to watch them again this year, those are the two critical areas that they got to get better at.
Yeah.
They've got some a transfer that they think can really help them, and plus just the experience coming back. So yeah, I think they have an opportunity. I think they'll be one of the top 3 teams in Conference USA. Rice is they're a top 25 team.
Yeah,
and probably
they brought back pretty much everything from last year as well.
And they were they won 30 games. So
yeah.
I think the Lady Toppers could be right close to them. They open up at Louisville, so they'll figure out real quick, kind of where they stand.
Yeah. And then, of course, I mean, Louisville has been fantastic in recent years.
One of the top programs in the country.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of people, though.
They did indeed. I mean, they are basically in a rebuilding year based on the talent that they lost.
But he's got 2 Georgia Tech starters that transferred in.
Right.
So, when you get to that level, people want to play for you.
Yeah. And then the Kentucky women have been good as well. Not quite at the same level as Louisville, but they've been solid.
Right.
So I mean, the women's programs should be pretty good to watch this year as well. I think in the state of Kentucky.
I agree.
Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we're going to cover a few quick notes here on our way out the door today. First thing is, region volleyball tournament starts tonight at Glasgow High School. It's $6 at the gate to get in. First game tonight is, I just said this to you, it is Allen County and South Warren at 6. And then it is Clinton County and somebody they got to play. I think it's Todd County. I think it's who they ended up. No, Russellville. That's who it is. Clinton and Russellville at 8. 7:30.
Allen is the district champion of our district.
Yep.
And they drew the worst draw they could draw. You could draw a Bowling Green school in district.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
that's not what you want to do.
No, I mean, Greenwood ended up sweeping South Warren in that district final this year, but they've had some great matches in the 14th District Championship the last few years, and South is right there with them. Greenwood in volleyball this year is kind of like Greenwood in soccer. They're dominant. Just slightly better than everybody else.
And by the way, Greenwood soccer is in the state semifinals.
Yes, that is correct. They won big on Saturday. I think it was Oldham County, South Oldham, somebody they were beating up on. Henderson. Was it 6?
No, it was Davis. It was Davis County, I think.
Davis beat Warren Central in the boys.
Henderson County.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, either way, Greenwood's girls are rolling in multiple sports. At the moment.
They'll be the favorite in volleyball. Glasgow plays tomorrow night.
That's right, at 6 o'clock, and then they play Logan County,
who outside the Bowling Green schools have had the best volleyball program in the region.
Yep,
consistently. I don't think they're near as good this year.
Right.
But they've actually won the region in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and then Greenwood plays at 7:30, and then whoever. They actually play Russell County. But so anyway, that's the setup for the regional tournament. The semifinals are Wednesday night. The finals are on Halloween at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So we've jokingly told the Greenwood and South Warren people, if they're the ones there, they should stick around and enjoy South Green Street.
Yeah.
Do some trick-or-treating after the
Don't
fact.
get off that exit.
Yeah, that was one of Craig's messages at the AD's meeting on Friday is, do not take that exit on Halloween night if you have to be here.
You won't get there.
Yeah. And then over the weekend, we had the regional meets, regional cross-country meets. Chesney McPherson for Barren County. I think she's an 8th grader. She finished 5th.
That's a really good showing.
Yep.
Class that's in there with the Bowling Green schools.
Yep, she had a good run.
Yep.
Qualifies for state, which is this coming Saturday.
That's right.
I think it's at the Kentucky Horse Park still.
That's correct.
And then Glasgow's teams also ran. They all ran over at what is it? Not Ephraim White. Yeah, it is Ephraim White. I think it is where they run. They ran over there for this past Saturday. And then Mia Cassidy with the girls, Glasgow girls, she qualified for state, and I think she was 18th. And then Logan Lindsay for the Glasgow boys qualified for state. So we got 3 state qualifiers, and not like you mentioned, McPherson's time was 18-something, I think it was, or somewhere in that neighborhood. So she's... as an 8th grader, that's pretty good. She's up-and-coming runner there for Barren County.
Yeah, and that's congratulations to her because the 5th in that region that's pretty strong.
Yeah, usually, I mean, Warren East and some of those schools have some really good programs.
Warren East, Greenwood.
Yep.
Grayson County.
Yep.
Bowling Green.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a quality performance for her.
Yep. So those are the things that are kind of going on this week and this coming weekend.
The longest season is cross country. They start when it's 102, and this weekend it's supposed to be cold up in Lexington.
Yeah, I remember we went up there one year. My son had qualified for state, and I think it was 15 degrees whenever we were headed up there. I mean, I don't know. It was in the 30s, though, when he ran. But the sun was out. And so you dress all for the warmth in the morning, and then the sun comes out, and all the stuff you're wearing when you're trying to run is not good anymore.
No, and the runners, in fairness, they like it cool.
Yeah.
Now, not necessarily cold, but cool is better than hot.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I always hated whenever you'd start choking on the wind. It was so cold outside out there trying to run.
I'm not a wind person in any sport.
Is that right?
No, wind is. I don't like golf in the wind and running in the wind. Yeah.
Well, when I was in the Army, they'd make you run and it was freezing cold, and then you'd get done, everybody's hacking and coughing, they'd start yelling at you, "Stop coughing!" And you're like,
"You caused it."
What is this? Some psychological trick? Well, I guess it was. Real quick, so we've already talked about the basketball seasons, college and then high schools, just over a month away, December 2nd.
You know, we've gone the whole segment, and this is how baseball has just lost interest. On TV. We haven't mentioned the World Series is 3-2. You know that, right? Yeah. It ends Wednesday.
Yeah,
it could end tomorrow.
Well, I didn't even realize they'd played all those games until last night.
Yes, that's right.
Well, good luck to the Astros and the Nationals. This is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.